So the picture on this screen right now, actually goes back. This is taken in 2016 because my sweet, sweet sister-in-law surprised my children early in the morning with a box of donuts. She is always doing thoughtful things like that. Her heart is just so sweet. But fast forward now, like to 2026, and it's hard to believe that that was a decade ago because I still vividly remember how ecstatic my children were to get that treat. And let's be honest, it wasn't just them, it was also me because I love donuts too, but even if they don't love my waistline right back. But the Father, he speaks to us in parables and he uses ordinary things that we understand to reveal deep spiritual, like hidden manna, hidden truths, okay? And he gave me a dream about donuts one time, and he completely shifted my perspective on what we're doing with what he gives us. So, spiritually speaking, what does a donut represent? Well, it represents the sweetness of the gospel, right? Because scripture tells us that we're to taste and see that the Lord is good. So, we're supposed to experience his mercy being new every single morning. And in Psalms 19:10, he says that his truths are sweeter than honey, even honey dripping from the comb. So this gospel is it's nourishment, it's refreshing. And when you receive that fresh revelation from the word, it's sweet in your mouth and it nourishes you. And what do you want to, what do you do when you get a box of fresh donuts? Well, you want to share them. You don't want to hide them away. But through this dream, AbbaYah showed me an area where I was actually mismanaging my goods, my life. Okay, I was essentially wasting the spiritual capital that he was trying to give me because I was mismanaging my time. And we've all heard the worldly saying time is money. But in James 4:14, he actually gives us a warning that life is but a vapor and we have little time here, it's going to vanish away. So that tells us that once we cross over into eternity, our earthly window to seek him, to truly know him, it closes. So you know, I had to ask myself, like, if God ran a spiritual audit on how I spent my day yesterday, what would he see? Like, how much time did I actually invest in eternity versus how much did I squander away on a distraction? And I had to ask myself, am I pleased with my own stewardship? Because if I'm not pleased, I can imagine he's probably not pleased. And here's the thing, we're all going to stand accountable for the time that we choose to seek him and the times that we choose to ignore him. And personally, living in this world full of distractions where it's designed to fill every single waking second to fulfill the lust of our flesh, it can be really hard. Because back in December of 2025, AbbaYah, he caught my attention. It was like I just knew. It wasn't like audible or anything like that. He just put it into my spirit where every time I had a spare moment, instead of running to Messiah, what I was doing is I was opening up YouTube. And I was looking to worldly intercessors and voices on the internet instead of my creator. So AbbaYah called me in 2025 in December to that spiritual fast, and he asked me to shut down basically YouTube and to choose obedience over my flesh, and I chose yes. And let me tell you, that's when my spiritual growth catapulted. Because years ago, around 2020, another example, I made a similar choice to turn off worldly music in the car. And I started using that to like different times of commuting throughout the day, taking my children here and there. I would use that time to either talk to him if I was alone in the car, or I would then talk deeply with my children. So instead of like just singing along to the radio station, that's when I was choosing to invest in intimacy. And it paid off. It paid off because I was investing in not only my children, I was also investing spiritually in my relationship with my creator. So I'm not talking, this isn't like legalism. This isn't about being perfect. It's truly just about a relationship that is only fueled by AbbaYah through that agape love that you have in him. And when we deliberately realign our will with his will, that's when we stop wasting time on things that he's never even called us to do. Because how in the world could we possibly know what we're supposed to do, what the purpose is for our lives? Because each one of us has a different calling on our life. How could we possibly know what that is if we're running to and fro and we never choose to seek him? But look at that donut, please, because it has a specific design right there. It has a hole right in the center. That whole truth right there is that every human being is born with a void that matches that shape, spiritually speaking. And we try to fill it, with social media or entertainment. Or, like me in the past, when I was a reporter, I tried to fill it with worldly success. But those things just fall right through the hole. We have to have salvation to fill that hole. And when he then occupies the center of our lives, we are then made whole in him. And that's when we become a new creation in him. In Matthew 25, Yeshua tells the parable of the talents. There's this master, he gave his servants capital to manage, and two of them invested it and multiplied it. But one servant took his talent and he buried it in the dirt. He wasted it. He did nothing with it. He did nothing with that talent. He did nothing with his time. He never grew the kingdom. You know, the gospel isn't, it's not just a sweet treat for us to enjoy. It's we're supposed to share it. And that's the whole point of the donut. Is that the revelation and the truth that he gives us every single day, that spiritual provision, that's the spiritual capital. And when we spend our days buried in YouTube or we ignore his voice, and I say just YouTube because that was my vice, right? But it can be anything. It can be anything. But that if we choose to ignore his voice, then that's us burying our talent in the dirt of this world. We're wasting the gospel. We're supposed to be a living testimony of him. But how can we ever be a living testimony of him if we're not a witness to what he's done in our lives? So please taste and see that the Lord is good. Let him fill that void in your life and then go pour that sweetness out into others in this world. Because we're all called to stop wasting our time and to spend it actually in him, not to waste donuts.